Welcome to Fight News Now. I'm John Pollock alongside John Ramdeen and Robin Black. We are going into the weekend and we have been discussing the fact that the UFC, from now until the end of the year, 3 entire weekends that you will have UFC free. One of them, you can celebrate Christmas if you have time. But it gives us a chance as well. We've been talking about Vancouver and we will touch on some final talking points for Vancouver. But first of all, looking ahead, there's a number of big heavyweight fights that are coming up over the span of the next 2 weeks, including the UFC Heavyweight Championship being defended by Stipe Miocic for the first time in Cleveland. And on this network, you're going to get to see Josh Barnett and Andre Arlovski, which kind of amazing, John, that when you look back, and we have a special airing on this, 15 years in the making, it really is such that this is a fight that, for a number of different timing issues, and Josh Barnett leaving the UFC in the way he did in 2002, a fight that should have happened years ago, but never did.
Well, yeah, it's shocking considering, and I talk about it in the special, about during that period, it was Tim Sylvia, Rico Rodriguez, Frank Mir, and Andre Arlovski that were the big heavyweights. Yeah, you had Justin Eilers and Paul Buentello, but these guys were the marquee guys. That's why people were tuning in. Tim Sylvia was the Miocic guy. Matt Hughes was there. Rich Franklin was there. Jens Pulver was there. All UFC champions. But Andre Arlovski was a little bit different. But there was also the storylines that was going on between Frank Mir and Tim Sylvia, and Frank Mir and Andre Arlovski and Tim Sylvia. They've had a slew of fights, but it's just amazing that during that time that the two kind of marquee guys, the young lions, being Barnett and Andre Arlovski, never had a chance to fight.
Yeah, it sucks that they didn't fight then, except for the good thing is now we get to have it now. Yeah. We get to have it next weekend live on Fight Network. Yeah. So that's killer. Now, you might think about it with a lot of athletes and go, oh, it would have been better in their prime. In a lot of ways, this is Josh Barnett's prime because his game is built around his brain, his mind. And Josh Barnett, you don't get dumber. Well, you know, you can, but he hasn't. His game is a highly cerebral game. And so for him, it's kind of better now. He's continually got smarter and better at his game, and maybe Arlovski's just a touch slower with age. So I think for Barnett, he should be a favorite in this fight, in my opinion. I think he's able to close the distance on Andre, which a lot of people can't do, but I think Barnett will be able to do it. Start to fatigue him, put him against the fence. He looked so good there against the fence in his last fight. But if he gets you on the ground, it's just a very traditional, by the books, half guard to side, to mount, to a beating, to your back, to a beating, to mount again, to head and arm choke. And he can do that on anyone. If Arlovski's going to win this fight, Barnett is going to find himself knocked out. Very hard to do.
Andre Arlovski, of course, he fought Stipe Miocic earlier this year. Also fought Alistair Overeem, and those two are going to be meeting the following weekend in Cleveland for the heavyweight title. It should be an incredible scene with Stipe Miocic defending that title, which has been a hot potato championship at heavyweight, which is what you're going to get, where I think that does add a lot to something like Barnett Arlovski. Look where Alistair Overeem was 3 years ago when he lost to Antonio Silva, the Travis Brown fight. I mean, we were looking at Alistair Overeem that this guy's never going to reach that level so many thought he would achieve when he came to the UFC, beating Brock Lesnar in that first fight. And now we fast forward, this guy's on the cusp of his first UFC championship fight, and who knows, this guy could very well be championship the day after.
Yeah, and when you look at trying to sell the heavyweight division, it's the heavyweights, you'd figure they'd be able to sell themselves, and it is interesting, but there's been no real fighter that's been able to capture the masses, the casual fan base. And during this time right now where the UFC is hotter than it's been in quite some time, with especially coming off the Nathan Diaz and Conor McGregor rematch, that fans, I think, want to tune into this product. So if Alistair Overeem can capture the UFC Heavyweight Championship based on the way he looks, based on the way that he fights, he's not afraid to take the mic and talk some smack. You could have a new star on your hands right now. I mean, yes, Alistair Overeem, if you're a hardcore fan, he's your guy. But I believe that Overeem could even appeal to the bigger audience.
You know who Coco Chanel is?
Yeah, I'm a designer.
Fashion designer. Her whole thing was, before you go out of the house, take off one accessory. Yeah. That was her thing, restraint.
Right.
And that's how Alistair Overeem kind of fights now. It's like he sort of takes...
That might be the best analogy I've ever heard.
He kind of takes off one weapon. Like, it's like he's not throwing all... He doesn't have earrings and goofy bracelets. He just kind of shows a lot of restraint. He's the Coco Chanel of fighters. He kind of sets you up, takes one bracelet off. He's about to leave the house. There we go. Put that there. And that's how he fights. A lot of restraint. Very smart. And if you're going to fight a guy like Stipe Miocic, he is super athletic and super aggressive, fast, quick reaction time, quick changes. You want to do that. Put that down. Just ease away a little bit. Fight with a little restraint. Coco Chanel, guys.
Well, if he's the Coco Chanel, I think he's fighting the Pabst Blue Ribbon of the UFC heavyweight division in Stipe Miocic. And that's going to be, to me, this is a real interesting pay-per-view because, yes, you do have this incredible buzz with the UFC at the moment that I sense a big fight involving Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz is going to generate. And whether you get not only that trickle-down effect, but the X factor of how many people that week are really going to be engaged in this CM Punk story.
Of course.
That is what all of this has been built around.
Ramdeen's engaged.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reality. You know, whether or not, because we were talking about it on 5 rounds, I feel that it's unfair to a guy like Uriah Faber that's done so much for the sport. You know, when you talk to mixed martial arts trainers and fighters at the highest level, and unless you have a beef, unless you're Dominic Cruz or a past adversary, people hold Uriah Faber in the highest regard. So it's just unfortunate that it's CM Punk, who's never spent one day fighting inside of the cage, gets all this this praise and this profile going into this fight. I understand it. He's bringing the audience with him. But what happens?
That's what this is, though.
I mean,
it's at worst, it's 15 minutes of your pay-per-view time.
Oh, it ain't going 15 minutes.
And to me, honestly, when you are hitting buy on your converter to buy that pay, they're not asking you a follow-up question, why are you buying this? They just want you to hit that B button and put in your code to spend this. And to me, this is a pay-per-view that without him is probably maxing out at around 250,000 buys. I think anything above that, you have to attribute to him. And that to me is a good thing, that more eyeballs are going to go see this heavyweight title fight as a byproduct of their interest in Punk.
You know what else that follow-up question isn't there? Did you buy this because you hate this guy and you're mad and you want to see him get beat up? It's still just a B. You're still just pressing the B, and that's how business works. And it's weird. There's plenty of reason to react to it. I mean, but at the same time, it's like, yes, you can't be a professional athlete in the NBA or the NHL or anything with 18 months of training in your late 30s, but well, you can here. Yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, I was freaking out at the beginning. Oh my God, this is the end of the UFC. This is horrible. Now I'm just like, I want to see this guy get a chance to go in there and do his best. He's not going to be particularly good because you can't. He's just got to be smart, not handle not be pressured, not be thinking about what people are going to think of him, not be thinking about the outcome. Just go in and have 15 minutes of fun. Martial arts is fun. He's supposed to be excited to be in there, because if he's not, this young kid is going to smash his face in.
One guy who understands the business end, I think, better than anyone is Dave Meltzer at MMA Fighting. And while it's an approximate figure, with this sale, I mean, he was targeting, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $88 million that the UFC needs to make in profits each year just to break even with the sale, somewhere in that neighborhood. And that could very well change the mindset of, okay, coming out of this Saturday, for instance, Damian Maia wins this fight. He may be the most deserving. We have to be putting the fights together 100%. That are the money fights. And that could very well change who is most deserving, and it's only going to intensify these debates about sport versus profitable fights, big profitability, that they're going to have to meet those expectations every year. It could very well change the matchmaking.
I would not be surprised. And again, you have to. I'm curious to know, is one of the reasons you have CM Punk, the former pro wrestler, on this card, was it intentional to have Alistair Overeem, the guy that everybody saw defeat Brock Lesnar, have him on this card to tie it all together to try to sell this to get as many eyeballs as humanly possible? Or is it just whatever the matchup, and then CM Punk will drive everybody else, all the other pay-per-view buys up?
Paul, you make a very interesting point. And this conversation, in the end, from our selfish perspective as fans, we just want to see cool fights. Yeah. I don't care, my personal feeling, about rankings and who's deserving. I used to, but that fight has been fought and lost. It's been fought and lost. If you're going to look at your favorite thing, in this case it happens to be fighting, and be frustrated all the time, why isn't this guy getting a thing? Why is Dan Henderson fighting this guy? And why isn't, if you're going to do that, it's a lot of stress in your life. It's not a winnable fight. It's sad. I want to see the best fighters, the best martial artists fight, but I think we lost this battle already.
Well, two of them are meeting on Saturday night in the main event in Carlos Condit and Damian Maia. You can catch our preview show Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time as we count down to the UFC's return to Vancouver.